Dick by Tony Gilbert, Part 2. The gates are unlocked and I push them open. A creak that sounds extraordinarily loud in the quiet sends a few birds flying from the trees surrounding the drive. We walk up to the large green shutters, me in front and Miss Love behind, dragging the priest by the beard. I'm still shocked that it doesn't come off with the ping of elastic at every sharp tug she gives it. The door looks as if it would collapse inwards with a solid kick, but Miss Love produces a key from a pocket of her jacket and unlocks a shiny new padlock, which looks out of place in the rusty metal ring, before sliding the shutter up. I look into the large open space in front of me, full of shadows, and hear Miss Love flick a switch. After a couple of sputtering instants, the warehouse floor is filled with light, and I can see what we have to work with. The floor is empty apart from a sturdy-looking chair in its center. A coiled rope sits on the seat. The priest must have seen it too, because he starts to whine, and I turn to see him squirming. "Hold on to him," Miss Love says to me, and I walk over, grabbing the priest's dog collar with a firm grip. Miss Love walks back to the shutter door and pulls it closed, which somehow makes the room look brighter. "Who are you? What do you want?" The priest stutters, wide eyes looking straight into mine. I am about to answer when Miss Love reaches an arm around him and puts a gleaming blade to his throat. "Now what did I say about talking, Edgar?" she says, and Edgar stops moving. I take my hand away and Miss Love leads him towards the chair, knife still against the bearded skin of his throat. I follow and pick up the rope just before she pushes him down onto the chair. "Do you know how to tie a rope?" she asks. "I know how to tie my laces," I answer. "I'm not used to this. I find that a few well-meaning threats normally do the job, but it seems Miss Love has other things on her mind." "Hold this," she says, gesturing toward the knife. I take it, and she makes a show of lashing the rope around the man, binding his arms, hands, and torso to the chair. She nods at me and I take the knife away. I notice a small droplet of blood that wasn't there before I took the knife. Miss Love must have seen the sliver of panic in my eyes, because she turns and takes my arm. "You can wait outside if you want. Richie asked me to deal with this in a certain way, and said that you might not feel comfortable with it." I nod, but stay where I am. As nervous as I am about seeing whatever Miss Love is going to do, the way she moves around the seated bound man, the way she touches his shoulder from behind and whispers in his ear, the way she smiles at me, all makes me want to stay. That and the knowledge that this man in front of me, this man of God, touched Richie's son in a way that no man should ever touch a child. "Are you staying?" she asks, and I am enthralled by the sparkle in her sapphire eyes. She takes my non-answer as affirmation and says, "Wait with him for a second." As she walks past me, the chamomile smell of her morning shampoo wafts into my nose, and I breathe deeply, eyes closed, before I know what I'm doing. I hear the shutter door roll up and sunlight spills in, causing shadows to shoot across the floor. I look at Edgar's songs. His eyes are red and tears are falling down his cheeks. "Please," he says to me, failing to keep his voice steady, "let me go." "No can do, Father," I say, but I begin to feel sorry for him. "What are you going to do to me?" I don't have time to answer as I hear the shutter doors close behind me. I turn and Miss Love walks toward me, holding a bag. She walks past me and drops the bag with a clang at the priest's feet. "Who are you?" he says, grunting between sobbing breaths. I ask the question, she says, as she crouches and unzips the bag. She pulls out a gag and hangs it in front of his face between a slender finger and thumb. "How many little children have you violated?" Her voice is steady, sweet, loving almost. "None," he says with an obvious effort. She draws her hand back and whips the gag across his face, the buckle leaving a welt that is immediately obvious. He squeals and tries to pull away from her, but the chair doesn't even move. I notice for the first time that it is bolted to the floor. "How many have you touched?" she asks. He doesn't answer this time and gets the same treatment. The buckle of the gag strap hits him in almost the same place, and a thin rivulet of blood appears on his cheek. I see him muttering something under his breath and realize that it's a prayer. "Your God won't help you now," Miss Love says with a snarl and pushes the gag into his mouth, buckling the strap behind his shaking head. I walk from the warehouse in a haze of confusion and awe, only to find two large men standing between our car and a small black van with S.E. Painter, Pest Eradication Experts, stenciled on the side. Miss Love's small hand touches my arm, and I turn to her. "Don't worry, Dick. They're with us." I look into those bright eyes and realize that I'm falling for her, falling for the small, gentle woman, a woman who could somehow perform the atrocities that I had seen in the warehouse behind me. I have never before witnessed a body being taken apart with such ease, with such happiness, as had happened in there, and yet, despite that, I want to take her slender frame in my arms and touch my lips to hers. It had been almost beautiful to watch her work. It hadn't taken long for the priest to tell us all about the sick acts he had performed on countless children, and I stopped feeling sorry for him in short order. She had begun with the fingers and ended with the eyes. I turn back to the men where they stand behind the van, rear doors now open, pulling on white overalls. Miss Love walks over to them through the open gates, and I watch her, enjoying the way her bottom moves at each step. She talks briefly to the smallest one and then turns to me. "You coming?" she asks. "Sure," I say with a smile. "Where to?" "Your place. You need to get some decent clothes on." Richie had arranged for a theater trip that evening to see the Broadway revival of Finian's Rainbow. Why he thought a production about a penniless leprechaun would be of any interest to me was beyond my understanding, but Miss Love seems excited, and I want to be in on the ride. The streets are busy on the way to my apartment. It is nearly 6 and the sun is warm and bright. We slow down a few blocks away and pull into an empty parking lot. "Be back in a moment," she says, pulling up the handbrake. I stay in the car and watch as she enters a nondescript building and disappears. I assume she wants to wash up. She had worn gloves throughout most of the act of pest eradication, but a red stain tinged her fingertips. I don't have to wait for her long. Miss Love emerges from the building through the same door she had entered in a black figure-hugging dress that leaves little to the imagination. She knows I'm watching. It would have been hard not to notice the childish maw of my mouth and my wide eyes, and she plays up to the fact that she looks more than good. I wish I could hold that tight body in my arms. We reach my apartment less than 10 minutes after leaving the lot, and I'm upstairs and back outside within 5. We reach the theater at 6:30, 30 minutes before curtain up. I wonder if they serve coffee here. The place is packed out, which makes me slightly uncomfortable. I work on my own, not because I'm unsociable, but because I'm just not keen on the majority of society. So when I see people looking at me in shock and overhear them whispering to their friends and wondering how I got to be next to the beautiful woman by my side, that just gets my goat. It takes us a while to find our seats in the theater, with very little help from a prepubescent usher with far too much Brill cream slicking his hair back underneath a little red hat. We do eventually manage to locate them and settle down between an old couple and a man with liquor on his breath. Miss Love seems enthralled by the whole thing, from curtain up to curtain down, and grips my hand during a song in Act 2 by Sharon McLonergan and Woody Mahoney. I'm not going to lie and say that I enjoy the performance quite as much as Miss Love, but I'm actually surprised to find myself humming along with a few of the songs. "Wanna cry, wanna croon, wanna laugh like a loon, it's that old devil moon in your eyes." There is a standing ovation, which I guess is less due to my monotone humming and more for the performance in front of us. There are 3 encores, 3, and Miss Love claps and cheers as loudly as anyone else. There are 3 encores, 3, and Miss Love claps and cheers as loudly as everyone else. When the lights shine on, the crowd begins to leave. I prod the drunk man next to me with an elbow, shocking him awake. He stands and nods thanks before bidding Miss Love a farewell and walking up the aisle. I stand and make to follow, but Miss Love takes my hand. I am hoping for a romantic walk beneath the stars and possibly a good night kiss, but she sits me back down instead. Richie got us backstage passes, she says. I know a couple of the actors. I'll introduce you. I smile at her, and she kisses me full and long. She tastes of peppermint ice cream with chocolate sauce, and I relish every mouthful. When the place is all but cleared out, we make our way down the aisle to the front and knock on a door to the side. A burly security guard opens it, and we show our passes. Walking into a stuffy room, Miss Love begins to look around for her actor friends, while I feign interest in the large selection of stage props on a table in front of the doors to the dressing rooms. Isaac, she calls out, her hand waving almost frantically above her head. She runs over and jumps into the arms of a topless man with the body of a god and a face to match. I follow in her footsteps, but without the frivolity and without the leap. I try to hold the eyes of the man with my girl on his bare chest. Dick, this is my good friend, Miss Love says over the wide shoulders of the Superman in front of me. This is Isaac. He releases his arms and Miss Love drops to the floor. I grab his offered hand and squeeze, watching his face for any sign that the bones in his hands are beginning to break. But there's nothing. I find myself getting a little jealous. Then he speaks. Hello, Dick. Very pleased to meet you. He has a shockingly girly voice, and his R's roll quicker than the traffic on the New York State Thruway. I have to stifle a grin. Very pleased to meet you, I say. He doesn't seem to notice my error. How long have you been interested in acting? He asks, and I decide to play along. Acting? Oh, ever since I was a kid. Isaac smiles at this. I was actually in a play recently, a modern one called The Hands of Song. Miss Love gives me a wary glance, but I see that there is still a twinkle in her eye. Ooh, I haven't heard of that one. James, I turn and see Miss Love's backside rocking its beautiful way towards a short, balding man in a blue tweed jacket. That's better. No competition. She throws her arms around his neck. Why don't I show you around? Isaac asks, in that near-perfect representation of Mickey Mouse. That'd be nice, I say, and I think I even sound a little bit interested. Maybe I should have a serious think about this acting gig. Maybe I should have a serious think about this acting gig. You got any coffee? He sends a young girl off with a flutter of one loose hand, without asking how I take it. Not that I mind how it comes. Not this late in the day. The chiseled statue of a man leads me off toward the dressing room doors, as Miss Love and the one she calls James head out to the stage in the opposite direction. The dressing rooms are compact, but look comfortable, albeit a bit messy, with a sickening array of colorful garments draped over gold-rimmed mirrors and shiny glass lamps. Short back chairs sit in front of tiny tables, where a number of half-dressed broads sit in front of their own reflections, removing stage makeup as swiftly as they reapply their own thick disguise. If it was still Saturday evening, I would have struggled to draw my eyes away from this amount of supple female flesh, but all I can think of now is Miss Love. Her peppermint kiss had really taken my breath away. This is our dressing room, Isaac says, stating the obvious. He isn't much of a guide and turns back towards the door without introducing me to anyone. I follow when we walk out to find a steaming coffee on a flowery tray and the glowing face of Miss Love with a smile. Just for me. Do you mind if I borrow him for a second, Isaac? She says. He looks a bit upset at losing me mid-tour, but he agrees with a sullen nod. I walk over and take Miss Love's hand. She leads me toward the stage and away from my drink, her fingers slipping between mine and holding on tight. Isaac seems nice, I say. He is, she agrees. I've known him for years. We walk out onto the stage. It's a pretty incredible sight. The auditorium's empty and the lights are low. There was a green carpet spread across the floor. Who needed a starlit walk when you had fake grass and fluorescence? She stops walking and turns, adjusting her grip on my hand. She looks me in the eyes and I look straight into hers. Then that kiss again. That beautiful kiss from those beautiful lips. Richie Hartman, you wonderful man. The kiss is over far too soon, and I still have my eyes closed as she runs her smooth finger over my right cheek. I lick my lips. That was wonderful, Dick. I nod, and that's when everything goes black.